Welcome back to another episode of DigiPod on DawnNews English with me, Usama Khilji, your host. We've been talking about digital rights in general, but today we thought we should focus on what really do we mean by digital rights? Is it the freedom of expression, the freedom of, or the right to privacy, freedom of association and assembly, another right? But very importantly, how do digital rights interact with artificial intelligence, especially in this day and age where we see that AI has become a reality? It's present in all our technological tools in ways that we use it, but a lot of times we don't even know that AI is governing our use of the internet and all the products that we use. For example, most social media companies use AI for deciding what you see on your feed. And what you see on your feed really shapes a lot of your thoughts, your opinions, and your perception of reality. To talk about this and a lot more, today we're joined by Nighat Dad, who's the executive director of the Digital Rights Foundation based in Pakistan, but also she served on the United Nations Secretary General's high level advisory panel on artificial intelligence. So, welcome to the show and to our podcast, Nighat. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're very excited for this conversation. So, to start, maybe we can hear from you on what are digital rights and how have we seen digital rights and the concept of it evolve with the advent and proliferation of artificial intelligence in society today?
Thank you so much, Osama, for having me. I think before I respond to your question, I would just like to say, like, we have been hearing a lot about artificial intelligence for the last couple of years. And to me, I kind of understood this as a hype, like metaverse and, other new emerging techs that we have seen over the years and then sort of faded away. But artificial intelligence kind of like the development that we have seen, it kind of made us feel like that it is here to stay. And but always witness the framing around AI is always very dramatic, coming from especially Silicon Valley, talking about the future and the super intelligence and the next industrial revolution. But to me, coming, like from global south and mostly working in South Asia, I always think, what does this mean for ordinary users of internet? What does this mean for women who are online in Pakistan or in South Asia, journalists who are working in global south? And to me, AI is not just innovation. It's, to be honest, looking at the geopolitics at the moment, it's about power. It's about power without accountability that we are seeing, which is really, really dangerous. We have seen that once with the social media as well, and now we are seeing that again with AI. But now coming to your question around digital rights, digital rights are simply human rights. Human rights that we can exercise online. So, for instance, when we talk about freedom of expression, your right to privacy, freedom of association and assembly, right to accessing information, all these are fundamental rights that are enshrined in our constitution. But when we go online, we have the same liberty to exercise the same rights in the online spaces. So, our right to privacy doesn't disappear because we are using an app or we are on social media. Our right to free expression doesn't disappear because we are on a social media platform. And our right to dignity doesn't disappear because an algorithm is making decision about us. So AI makes all of this now more invisible. Uh, I feel that we were still fighting the fight for digital rights, and now with the advent of AI, it's becoming more complex. And today, digital rights mean is, to me, that the questions that I think a lot is basically, do I know when I'm interacting with AI? Do I know how my data is being used by different AI, the AI agents that we use, like ChatGPT. Can we challenge automated decisions by these platforms that the AI is making? And can can we protect ourselves from AI generated, especially I means like women mostly face like gender based abuse online. So can we protect ourselves from AI generated abuse? So I think it's very now real, when we look into the risks and harms around AI. I feel like the work and debate has become more complex around digital rights.
No, absolutely. And thank you for breaking it down so well because, for the longest time, we heard young people say, or even others saying in real life or online. But in reality, it's all connected. There's nothing fake about our online presence. It's all real life. It's just a form of communication. And I think that itself is so important, especially when it comes to the risks, as you touched upon, technology poses. But also in terms of artificial intelligence, we're talking about AI slop now. We're talking about all this content, and I feel like the biggest question in the past year that people have asked is this AI or is this real? Because now people's like realities are so blurred because they say, okay, did this person actually say this, or is this an AI generated person or comment? And that itself has posed a lot of risks and a lot of questions. We think about elections and how they're manipulated, but we also think of everyday discourse, and especially when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to society and social issues. It's posed a huge risk. And what we've seen recently is that a lot of people from big companies related that work on artificial intelligence, people are resigning, and they're saying that, okay, we're not okay with the way this is going. So maybe you can touch upon that, and tell us, why are experts sounding the alarm on artificial intelligence, and what can we learn from that?
So, what's interesting is that the warnings aren't just coming from global South organizations and activists like us, that, like in the past, we have been raising alarms around social media. Researchers from these companies like OpenAI or Anthropic, they have stepped down while raising concerns publicly, and their concerns are simply, we are building faster than we are protecting, and that's what we all have been saying for a very long time. There is intense competition. Governments want dominance, as we are seeing at the moment in South Asia. Two AI summits are happening. Of course, India AI summit is pretty big. But also companies around the world, especially AI companies and existing social media platforms who have integrated AI into their systems, they want market share. Things like safety, governance, long-term consequences, these conversations are more slower than the conversations around innovation, development, and future. And here's the thing, countries like Pakistan really are not building frontier AI at scale. What we are doing is we are adopting it, which means that we inherit risks designed elsewhere, mainly in the global north, without shaping the rules, without shaping the, framing the rules of the game. And I believe in this geopolitics, that imbalance should really worry us.
No, absolutely. And in those terms, we're thinking of, for example, Grok, which had this feature where you could undress people, just asking AI to do that. And then we've also seen, multiple other uses of AI that have been, and you touched upon this, very risky to women, to gender minorities, to the transgender community, and to children also. And this also poses the question that, yeah, we can, welcome innovation, but that innovation, like you said, comes at a huge cost. And especially the bad actors that, exist in society, of course, pose a huge risk to people. So maybe you can touch a bit upon safety and, are regulations around the world up to speed with the risk that it poses to the safety of vulnerable populations of minorities?
Before responding to your question, I would like to touch upon something that you said around, the risks and harms from gender perspective. And As you know, we run this digital security helpline where mostly women, they reach out to us regarding their complaints around cyber harassment. And in just last 1 to 2 years, we have seen that, the complaints around AI generated abuse, that those complaints have become really, like top of everything that we receive. And it's really terrifying because it's really so easy now for bad actors to create deep fakes, or so before AI, abuse required effort. Even photoshopping something,
Mm.
we as experts sitting at the helpline, we would know that this is a photoshop thing. It was easier for victims and survivors also to say to other people that these photos are photoshopped. These intimate images are fake. But now, they look so real that even when they come to us, like, we have to look them so carefully to identify whether that is a deep fake or not. And what it requires, making a deep fake only requires few clicks now, because there are so many tools out there. And even not just tools, like you mentioned, Grok is like a big, chat bot, integrated in X, the way we have like other chat bots. But the the kind of things that Grok started doing, and the access to the users, was just like horrific. So I think when we talk about AI, we really cannot ignore gendered impact, especially South Asia is already really unsafe for women who are online. I would say, like, we really couldn't manage to address traditional forms of online abuse, and now we have like these sophisticated deep fakes and gendered AI abuse, which I don't think that many of us are ready to sort of deal with that. You asked about the governance and regulation challenges. We shouldn't look into AI in uh, isolation. It's kind of it's everywhere, like all the developments that are happening. For instance, Pakistan has one of the largest biometric databases, right? But what happens when biometric data connects to AI system without strong oversight? What happens if there is a breach? You cannot really change your fingerprint. You really do not have access to anything where you can, change your password, because you do not even have access to, this whole database. But some other actors have access to database. So, the safeguards are very weak, not just in Pakistan, across South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. AI is being integrated into our governance systems, into our public, the public utility system. But the safeguards are weak, and many of us, including yourself, have been repeatedly raising these concerns about lack of data protection enforcement, poor transparency around AI use, and no independent audit system. There is absolutely no structure we have where we can hold any like any body accountable. There is no body, there is no law, there is no governance. So we are just sort of operating, I don't know, in a very dark environment where, like, you don't have any power over your data, but you know that there is this huge biometric database, which is the world's largest database, and you don't know who has access to it, and you cannot do anything when the data is leaked through that database.
No, absolutely. And thank you for raising the lack of a data protection framework in Pakistan, right? Because we don't have any data protection laws, which means that if your data is leaked, you have no legal recourse. You cannot go to court and say, my data has been violated, it has been breached, I need this remedy. There is no protection on oversight of how that data is being used. And I think that poses a huge risk to the population because, people's very personal details, very sensitive data is being managed, like you said, in a huge database. And it's also being sold in the black market now, which itself is such a huge risk. And then when we talk about AI, we don't know how it's being processed for further surveillance. We have facial recognition technology available. We have cameras flashing on every road in any large city that you go to. So it's very important that this is addressed. Now, I want to come a bit to the economic shockwave of artificial intelligence. We've seen how, especially in the IT sector, so many people have lost their jobs to AI, and the huge risk that is present now is that of unemployment due to AI. So, what does the future look like? Some estimates suggest that 40 to 60% of jobs could be exposed to AI disruption. But like you said, in especially in South Asia, we're only adopting AI rather than thinking of beyond that. So how do you see, the changing dynamic of employment of skills and jobs due to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, even this conversation is happening so quickly that, a couple of months ago, at least I was of the view that, yes, AI cannot really replace humans. And of course, it cannot replace humans. It's still artificial intelligence. It's not a human intelligence. But the way you are seeing they are developing this technology and the competition between companies is just, it's very scary. And I'm not sure if you have heard this interview of this main researcher of Microsoft, Mustafa, who actually, while talking to an interviewer, he was saying that jobs like accounting, lawyering, these job and couple of other jobs, these jobs will disappear, and AI will become so much expert that like in 12 to 18 months AI will be doing all of this. um, and it's kind of scary to hear because yes, AI can do this, and like people who have much more power over these systems, they are capitalists. They only look for their own profit, and not really humans and users. But I guess it's also about transformation, to be honest. The problem is with the AI development and all the progress that is happening is this transformation in the tech is not equal. So, for instance, in Pakistan, many young people, they use freelance platforms. There is a lot of content moderation, outsourcing, customer support, basic coding. But now we know that AI tools can automate a lot of that. So a real question is, what will happen to our youth population? We already struggle with unemployment and digital gender gap as well.
Mm.
um, if AI reshapes the labor market and we don't have reskilling system in place, I would say that this inequality will deepen. I don't think we have a focus on reskilling our youth or having more opportunities for them. I guess we are not even like having these conversations. Rural communities will be hit harder, women will be hit harder, and we don't have any like national conversation about social protection in an AI economy. We are having this AI summit, Indus AI Week, but how many people know about this? Your mass population is disconnected. They don't even know whether this kind of conversation is happening in your capital. But this technology will impact all of them. And I think that's where we need to bring this conversation.
No, absolutely. And you touched upon the idea of reskilling, and that is so important because upskilling in artificial intelligence now is critical because, as you mentioned, all your professions are now going to be integrated with AI. So if a population does not catch up, and if the state does not push it to, or make an environment that's, susceptible, not susceptible, but an environment that is nurturing to that reality, then we lose out, and we lose out on competitiveness. And even now, Nighat, as you can see, my video is lagging in this recording because the internet quality is so terrible. And with such connectivity issues, how do people upscale, or how do people use technology in order to, improve their performance? And unfortunately, we've seen that emigration from Pakistan has been at some of its highest since 2024, because and that's when we saw internet speeds really get impacted by, what people call the firewall installation and other tweaking of the internet infrastructure, which has slowed it down so much that people, especially that work in technology sector, have left the country. And I think that is a major issue. So if we don't have the fundamental infrastructure for technology and for people to work and for internet to function smoothly, how will we upskill people on artificial intelligence, right? And it's important to realize that these things are interconnected. We've heard the Prime Minister announce, I think, something around $1 billion investment into artificial intelligence. He's spoken about upskilling. He's spoken about education in AI, which is all very important and welcome. But I think the government that needs to lay the infrastructure for that, and beginning with internet, because without that, any of these investments, will be ineffective if you're not able to even access quality internet.
Yeah,
And
I
and you know
mean,
that's
have a basic infrastructure in place, like access to internet. And if you have intermittent internet across country and unequal internet access, then I'm not sure how we can talk about equal upskilling, especially around AI and covering all the youth when 70% of your population, they live in the rural areas. Um, yeah, I mean, they really need to sort of focus on the fundamentals of, technology before moving ahead to AI and emerging tech. And I feel when it comes to governance and regulation gaps also, like we cannot really talk about AI without having a data protection law, to be honest. Every country which has gone into AI, sort of race, they first, came up with their data protection law. Even our neighboring country, their data protection law in India, uh, they kind of worked on it for years and years, and just last year they passed it. No, and we are not talking about what kind of law they have passed, but at least they have passed the law so that they can join other nations into this AI race. And I think we really need to prioritize, what are our priorities when it comes to IT. I think that needs a clarity.
No, absolutely. And that brings me to the next question, the regulation gap, and you've already touched upon this in our conversation. But, we're seeing that the governments are struggling to keep up, globally, but also especially locally. And of course, we know that technology evolves way faster than lawmaking, right? So we have also this tension where there's a lot of national regulations, but can they effectively govern global artificial intelligence platforms is the question. Because of course the technologies related to AI that are being used are the same everywhere, and function in a certain way. But we have And like you said, a lot of countries have set those data protection regimes, and of course, those impact the use of AI technologies. But we also have companies who are innovating across borders, and trying to grapple with country-specific, policies and regulations. So, what does that mean for the overall regulation environment that we have for AI?
Yeah, I mean, you actually touched upon everything, the regulation gap and the governance gap that we are seeing in AI ecosystem. And as you rightly said, that technology evolves very quickly, and policy and regulation, they take years. And as I already said, that in Pakistan, we are still debating personal data protection framework, and hasn't come up with anything as yet. Meanwhile, AI systems are already being integrated into platforms and services and public services, and you must have heard facial recognition systems in our safe city programs across different cities in Pakistan. So I think we are already using these systems, but we don't have basic frameworks, and we really need to start from basic. But also, like globally, companies operate across borders. Social media, it was the case with social media platforms. It is the case with AI companies as well. But I think that our argument is also the same with AI companies. The way we kept pushing social media platforms as well. That like when you are designing policies or designing products, sitting in global north or Silicon Valley, your product and your policies on your platform affect, for instance, a political speech in Lahore, on X or
Hmm.
on Meta. But the problem is the technologies are cross borders, but laws stop at national boundaries. So that's where the gap is. Where is the international governance framework? And as you
Hmm.
mentioned in my introduction, I mean, I served as UN Secretary General's AI High Level Advisory Body panel member. And we came up with, like a governance framework where all countries who are member states of UN have to abide by, such and such, think around the basic governance framework on AI. So at least there is a threshold and framework when countries come up with AI governance mechanisms and laws. But I think the real question is um, how many countries will abide by, that framework, right? Because the race and the competition is just so uh, tough and strong at the moment. No one will care about UN mechanisms. I mean, we are already seeing with what is happening with UN mechanisms. So I don't know the answer, but I feel it's a question, it's a holistic question, because our regulators and policymakers really don't understand. They don't have technical expertise just to understand the basic internet, and we are talking about AI systems here and tools. So the question is basically, like how we are bridging all these gaps around expertise, around catching up with the debate around the tension between national laws and international technology. And this is not just our tension. Like you see Europe at the moment, they are dealing with their the limitation around Digital Services Act and the stubbornness of US. Most of the companies are based in the US, so there is this tension going on across the world, and I think we all yet need to like see the answer.
Well, thank you, Nighat, for touching upon that. And you've told us about the gaps in policy making. You've told us about how it's not really an inclusive process because we don't see experts becoming part of the policy making, the law making, or the public debate. That really there is a lack of public debate around regulations and laws, especially around technology, and that really shows. So where do we go from here? We have artificial intelligence; it's a reality, and we have the changing, environment of society. So what does the future look like for us?
Sama, I'm not an anti-technology person. I believe in, innovation and also, AI has incredible potential. It can do so much wonders, disaster response, language accessibility, climate modeling. I mean, so much that we can do with AI. But I think the core question is that innovation without rights is really not a progress. And I think that's where we are leading. We are having conversations around innovation and tech development without inclusion of, rights in that conversation. In Pakistan, not only in Pakistan, I would say in the region, um, it's a small region, South Asia, and we really cannot progress alone, especially in this AI race, in this geopolitics. And regional cooperation on AI governance is much needed. And then coming to Pakistani investment, you have mentioned Prime Minister announced this much investment, and I believe that they need to invest in the basic infrastructure that we spoke about, like good internet, infrastructure around, like accessible internet, but also like upskilling our youth. We really need to kind of map out like what is the digital literacy rate in our country, right? And that's once we have that from there we can go, upskilling our youth and where they stand at the moment. um, and civil society or people who have who bring the rights discourse around technology, they should be at the table and not really outside the room. I think that's what is happening at the moment. We, or even if we are part of the conversations, I'm not sure how much of our feedback actually makes a difference, or it's just ticking a box exercise. Um, at Digital Rights Foundation, we are working on research into AI-enabled gender abuse, for instance. We are focusing on policy advocacy for stronger data protection, and we all actually have to push for these changes because our privacy rights are not protected until or unless we have a good, balanced, stronger data protection law in place. And then I think community awareness, like all of our jobs who know digital rights or are aware of social media platforms, our job is to do community awareness around emerging AI harms. Our
Mm.
marginalized groups and vulnerable communities, especially journalists, your minorities who use these platforms without knowing much about the harms and abuses of AI, it's our job to sort of like give them awareness. So I guess I mean that's all I can say. There is so much that we all can do, and all stakeholders have to do, and starting from basics, honestly.
No, thank you, Nighat. Thank you for joining us. And that was a very rich conversation around digital rights and, artificial intelligence. We've spoken about what are digital rights, how they're impacted by artificial intelligence. We've also spoken about the risks and, why are experts sounding the alarm now? And then we talked about the economic side of artificial intelligence when it comes to employment and jobs. And we talked about regulation, but very importantly, we talked about what does Pakistan need on the foundational level for all of this to evolve into something that benefits all of us. And the key takeaway from that is a strong data protection law and better internet infrastructure. And if that foundational necessity is not fulfilled, then upskilling the youth and upskilling the population, which is very important, will lag behind. So thank you very much for joining us, Nigat, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us. We'll be back next week with another episode of DigiPod. This is Osama Khilji signing out. Thank you.